My daughter is dying. Come and lay your hands on her, and she will live.
And I know if I touch him though, I know power will be released. I know my story will be changed. I know I will be whole. And the heading in itself really grabbed my heart. The dead child and the sick woman, leading me to believe that I'm getting into a story that perhaps has great connection.
Your faith has made you well.
We see some kind of mirroring between the two stories, that we see a child who is 12-year-old and we see a woman who's been bleeding for 12 years. And so there is this mirroring of the number 12. So I always saw the stories as two different stories that are not really connected, but really they're intertwined. To herself, she said this: if I can just touch his robe, I will be made whole. I guess for her, she knew what it means to be whole, what being whole means to her. Sometimes I feel that we compare ourselves with others and we see what others have and what their wholeness is, and we desire that. I feel like sometimes we don't know what that is for us, you and I. What does being whole mean to you? What is the place that if you arrive, you know this is complete? Touched me deliberately, one, and then later he said, your persuasion has healed you. So there was an agreement that had happened with what was going to be released from Jesus and from where she was coming from. Her delay at her arriving, at her persuasion, at her decision place, that delay was causing death somewhere else. She needed to arrive at a certain place quickly to save that child. And her healing being delayed and her struggle at this place over there, a younger child was dying. So let me bring this into full circle. Okay? You follow me here. So this child is 12 years old, and this woman has been bleeding for 12 years. So if she's been menstruating for 12 years, you could do the math. She could be a mother to this 12-year-old, right? So for all intensive purposes, you could say that she could be her mother, right? This could be a tale of two generations, a younger generation and mothers, the church and the generation coming after. And in this day and age, we are praying and we are seeking God's face for God to intervene on behalf of the younger generation, our children, for God to restore them back to his house. Many young adults have abandoned the church and have left the church, and we're finding ways to bring them back into the fold. So the connection of this story is profound. The stories of the dead girl and the sick woman. You see, we are so focused in trying to make sure our children are in the house of God, or we're trying to fix them so much, but we are bleeding. And the way to heal them is to heal ourselves, ladies. The first thing we need to do is to seek God. What the father needed to do, what Jairus needed to do, was to seek God, to go after God. And what the woman who could have been her mother, clearly she's not her mother, but symbolically she could have been her mother. What that woman could do is for herself to find wholeness. In order to heal our children and the next generation, we have to stop. We have to pause. We have to return. We have to rest. We have to find salvation for ourselves. You see, she didn't have to, the daughter didn't have to do anything. She just had to lay there. All she needed was a man, a father who prayed, and a symbolic woman who pursued Jesus for her own healing, for healing to come to this child. For our children to be restored, we do not need to start fixing them. We need to first find the gospel, the good news for ourselves. We need to find the hope in Jesus, this hope of glory, this promise that we have found in Jesus, that life is not just here. Life is eternal. What we have in God, what we have found in Jesus, is life abundant, not just for earth, but for eternity. If we can get swallowed in that hope to the point where nothing phases us anymore, that is what the children are looking for. That is what they're seeking. That is why they're lost. They're looking for their identity. They're looking for a place to be planted where hope that comes from what is unseen. That is what they're looking for. Billy Graham once said, I'm paraphrasing, that you are the Bible that the unbelievers read. The next generation is so desperately seeking assurance, security, a place of peace. And we wonder sometimes, why are the young people closing the door and not talking to us? Why are our children running away from the house of God? They are pursuing hope that they're not finding in us. We need to find the hope of glory who is in Jesus. We need to find the peace. We need to find the rest. We need to find the restoration. They will come after it. When they see it, they know it. You see, the life of this woman, this little girl that is all 12 years, is sandwiched between these two adults. The mother that was bleeding, and the father, the synagogue leader, who had so much to give up in order to stand in faith for her restoration. He needed to give up all the power, or even the ego attached to it, or whatever people might say about him. He needed to lay it all down to come seeking where he heard hope was, where he heard healing was. He had to come after him, after Jesus. Jairus was not just this little girl's father. He was also a synagogue leader. He was a church leader. He has his own routine of how things were done, but he had to put aside and step out of that box of how the system works to pursue Jesus. He had to do something new. And so at that time, if you've seen the atmosphere, is that whoever followed Jesus at that time was going to be put out of the synagogue, put out of their system. He is not going to be considered any Jewish leader, but he was willing to put all in the line for his child, for the next generation's sake. He was willing to get out of what was customary at the time. What are you willing to risk for your child? What are you willing to risk for the coming generation, so that they can meet Jesus also? The church leaders and the synagogue leaders have their own goals. They have, I'm sure, their own yearly budget. They have their own yearly goal of what kind of building they're going to build, what they were going to do. But he was willing to put it all at risk to pursue healing for his daughter. As church leaders, what are you willing to risk? As fathers, what are you willing to be put out of in order to bring healing for your children? The sooner church and church leaders come to a place of conviction that I must stop my own bleeding, and I need to shut programs in order to touch Jesus, find wholeness and completion for myself. The sooner leaders do this, the sooner the next generation return back to the house of God. You see, just like the mother needed to find her healing through deliberate pursuit of Jesus, there was a role the father had. This child couldn't do anything except to lie there and wait for her healing. But the father had to jumpstart this whole thing. He had to get up and seek fervently, had to pursue Jesus. And fathers, we need you to get up and move in the direction of Jesus for the wholeness of the next generation. Jesus needed the Jairus to stand in faith, to stand believing, not to be wavering in his faith. That partnership of the Father with Jesus was very important for the healing and restoration of the child. Fathers, be present in your homes. Know what's going on with your children's lives, where they're dying. Are they dying in their education, in their relationship, in their spiritual life? Where is it happening? Be present, be knowing, and be praying, and be standing in faith. You see, what you have to understand is the child, when Jesus arrived at her house, she was dead. What does a dead person have to do to find healing? Do they pray? Do they fast? Do they seek God? What can they do? What can a dead person do? You just have to lay there and wait for the power of God to raise them. That's our children. That's the next generation. But what did the mother have to do? What did church leaders have to do? What do I have to do? The agreement that we must have as adults, as parents, as church leaders, to stop everything and find hope in Jesus and be secure in what He said is wholeness for us. Be okay and be content with the parameters of life that He had mapped out for us, without comparing with others who are building bigger and greater churches, or those who are having more, those who are better cooks, those who are better designers, those who have better anything, houses. If we stop comparing ourselves and be content with the parameters of life that God had mapped out for us, and within that find Him to touch us, if we can agree to be content, to be at peace, to be okay, they will come for it. If we are carrying that glory, they will come for it. We do not need to convince them. They are laying there waiting and hoping for wholeness. They are desperately waiting for us to be made whole. We need to decide, when I wake up, I have to ask myself, what does wholeness mean to me? And what am I deliberate about today? What am I determined to do? What is my conviction about the outcome of my day and my life? Today, what's going to happen is I'm going to be whole because I'm going to touch Jesus. Today, the end of the day, no matter what I go through, at the end of the day, I'm going to be complete because I'm going to encounter Jesus. He is the bread of life. He is the water of life. He will restore my life. He will change my story. God bless you. It was wonderful spending this time with you and sharing this truth with you as I journey through the scriptures. Thank you so much.